Now, Oscar Wilde, ever the wag, and a person who put more good literary theory in ways that didn't seem like literary theory at all, perhaps in the entire history of thinking about these subjects, says in the famous series of aphorisms which constitute his preface to the picture of Dorian Gray, he concludes this series of aphorisms by winking at us and saying, all art is quite useless. I hope that after reading these passages and enduring the explication of them that you've just heard, you can immediately see what Wilde means by saying all art is quite useless. He's appropriating a term of opprobrium, in the utilitarian tradition. Oh, my goodness, that something would be useless, right? He's appropriating a term of opprobrium and pointing out that it is an extraordinarily unique thing about art, that it's useless. In other words, that it appeals to no merely appetitive or other form of subjective interest. We don't have to have an interest in it in the sense of owning part of a company. We don't have to have an interest in it in order to appreciate it. In other words, we can be objective about it. We can distance ourselves from our subjective wants and needs and likes and dislikes. And we can coexist with it in a happy and constructive way that is good for both of us. Because if we recognize that there are things in the world which have intrinsic value and importance and what we call beauty, and yet are not the things that we covet or wish to banish, we recognize in ourselves the capacity for disinterestedness. We recognize in ourselves a virtue which is considered to be the cornerstone of many systems of moral understanding. To realize that we're not interested in everything and merely for that reason take a view of things, but that there are things that we don't have to have that kind of interest in and can nevertheless recognize as self-sufficient and valuable, is important. The suggestion is, Wilde's suggestion, but I think also Kant's suggestion before him, is important for our recognition of our own value. And by the same token, all this harping on the autonomy of art, that is to say, the self-sufficiency of art, the way in which it's not dependent on anything, as Sidney says, the way in which it's not a serving science, existing merely to represent things other than itself, right? The way in which this is possible for art is also, as our own capacity to be disinterested is, a way of acknowledging that freedom exists, that I am free, that things are free. Things are free from my instrumental interest in them. So that, in general, what's implicit in this view of art and this view of human judgment, and what makes it so important in the history of thought, is that once again, and this is not the first time we've brought this up in these lectures and won't be the last, is that once again, it's a way of recognizing that in addition to all the other things that we are, some of them wonderful, in addition to all of that, we are also free. There is in us, at least, an element that is free, independent, serving nothing, autonomous.